I know the elections are coming up, but it's always, and Judicial Watch doesn't take a position as to who to vote for. We don't advocate for or against candidates. We can't under the law. But we can advocate for clean elections and fair elections. And to that end, we have an election integrity project. Among its core activities is using federal law that requires states to clean up the election rolls to require states to clean up election rolls, and it allows for private rights of action. So a group like Judicial Watch can represent itself or clients and go into states that have dirty election rolls and sue. Either warn them, sometimes warning them works too. But when it doesn't work, we can sue in federal court. We sued in Ohio and in Indiana. We sued in Kentucky and in California most recently. And the suit in Ohio ended with Ohio agreeing to take certain steps to clean up their rolls. The rolls don't have to be perfect, but you've got to take reasonable steps to make sure that people who are dead and move away aren't on your election rolls, because that's a recipe for fraud. Dirty election rolls can mean dirty elections. And Judicial Watch has, for the last several years, been doing analyses of census data, comparing it to registration data as made available through the federal government, and has found that there are many states, too many states, where they have more people on the rolls than are eligible to vote. Let me say that again. They have more people on the rolls than are eligible to vote. So let's say you live in a place where there are 100 people who are able to vote under the law. But when you go and look at the registration list, it says 110 people are registered. That happens all over the country. It was happening in places like Ohio and Indiana. It was happening in Kentucky, which was a mess. It's in California, they don't, best I can tell, they don't remove anyone from the rolls. They just call them inactive, but they're still on the rolls. And that's a recipe for fraud, because if you know that people aren't there to vote, but you have their names and addresses and such, it's easier to vote illegally in their names. So that's the concern. And so Judicial Watch sued Ohio, and as I said, it resulted in a settlement or in an agreement. It ended as a result of this agreement that Ohio would at least send out one additional mailing to make sure that people were around. Now, the law doesn't let you just say, hey, if you don't send the mailing back, we take you off the rolls. It means they send the mailing out. They haven't heard from you in 2 years in terms of voting. Plus, you can't not have voted in 2 election cycles, federal general election cycles. So anywhere it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 years for you to be removed from the rolls. That seems fair, right? Well, the left doesn't want any of that, because I'm convinced the left wants dirty election rolls so they are able to steal elections if necessary. Otherwise, why would they oppose us? But they do oppose us. So they hated that Ohio agreement. They sued and tried to get it overturned. And thankfully, the Supreme Court ruled and upheld the validity of that Judicial Watch agreement, its last term. But that's not enough. So they went back to the lower court just recently, and they tried to get the lower court to basically, again, overturn the Supreme Court opinion and turn back on, or put back on the rolls, 1.5 million potentially ineligible voters. And these are people who, based on how far back we were going in terms of the calendar, people who have not voted or otherwise communicated with the state about their that they were still there for over a dozen years. But obviously would have included dead people, people who moved to other states. And they were being told that this left-wing group, it was a front for the AFL-CIO, wanted the court to reinstate all of these names. Now, Judicial Watch, because of our interest that I've told you about, filed what is called an amicus curiae brief with the court. It's a friend of court brief. And the court cited it in agreeing that that would be wrong in terms of allowing all these names to be put back on the rolls. As Judicial Watch said, that the radical step to put these names back on the rolls would harm the public interest, given that so many of the reinstated registrations would be legally invalid because they are associated with voters who are living in other states or are deceased, as I said. And thankfully, the court warned on October 10th, this ruling came down, that the latest court challenge could potentially be viewed as an end run around the Supreme Court's decision. So we're really gratified that this district court judge, a federal court judge, turned aside another leftist attempt to dirty up the voter rolls and to undermine clean elections. So that attempt to put all these individuals who have been lawfully removed from the registration rolls, and a good portion of which should not be on the registration rolls, has been turned aside by a federal court, in large measure thanks to Judicial Watch. So these are the sorts of battles that have to be fought every day. There's no one watching the store on clean elections, relatively speaking. The Justice Department is starting to come to life again. Under the Justice Department previously, the Obama administration, even during the Bush administration, they didn't want to do any of this because the Justice Department is controlled by the left. Even sometimes when Republicans run it, it's controlled by the left. And so the Obama administration never took any steps to require states to take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls, despite the fact that Judicial Watch, the most recent Judicial Watch study in 2017, and it was largely the same in prior studies, showed that 3.5 million extra names are on the voting rolls across the country. 3.5 million extra names are on the voting rolls across the country. Those are people who are on the rolls who shouldn't be there in various states across the country. As I said, the Justice Department is starting to come back to life. In Kentucky, they joined our lawsuit in Kentucky, and it resulted in a consent decree in Kentucky where I think Kentucky, certain counties in Kentucky, if I recall correctly, had 114% of the voting age population on the voting rolls, or eligible population on the voting rolls. And thankfully, the Justice Department agreed with our concerns. They came in, and the state of Kentucky agreed to a consent decree that required them to take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. So that's good news. So we had good news in Ohio. Ohio is an important state, and now they're going to have cleaner elections because of litigation that Judicial Watch has been pursuing for upwards now of 6 years. And as I said, we won initially. We ended the lawsuit thanks to an agreement, but the left came in and tried to undo it. It ended up in the Supreme Court. Even after we won the Supreme Court earlier this year, the left went back again for another shot to try to take it out. So eternal vigilance certainly is the price of working at Judicial Watch, to stretch the phrase. So we're happy to be able to do the work, but it's important work because I can think of there's one or two other groups on the conservative side who take action along the lines we're doing. But Judicial Watch is certainly the largest. So we've got this big case pending in California. In Maryland, we're asking for access to the rolls to ascertain how dirty they are, and Maryland is fighting us tooth and nail on that, even though the law requires access to the voting rolls. So it's Judicial Watch that's your watchdog for clean elections right now. And we're doing more than the Justice Department's been doing to date. We hope the Justice Department does more. But as you know, we don't rely on the government to do the work that needs to be done. And when we see an opportunity to do this necessary work, in this case, making sure that your elections are cleaner, we do what we can under the law. We're happy to be able to do it. And so we'll keep on fighting. Excuse me, our election integrity project is run by Bob Popper. Now, Bob used to work at the Obama Justice Department, believe it or not. And he was the deputy chief of the voting section there. So he knows what he's doing. So we're gratified to have that expertise and his team of lawyers doing this great work and getting good results in places like Ohio.